Hello, my name is Ryan Sandwick. Thank you for watching 6 Minutes with CEDIK. This series focuses on community design, and this episode introduces us to what community design is. Community design is a people-centered approach that uses design and planning to promote places for people. This is accomplished through participatory design and authentic community engagement. Historically, our cities and downtowns were the cultural, economic, and social center of our cities. Most buildings were inherently mixed use, with shops and services on the ground floor and the shopkeepers and business owners living above them. Streets, one of our city's largest public spaces, were accommodating to everyone. As we see in this photo, there were bicycles, cars, horses, buggies, and trolleys sharing the streets together in cities of all sizes across the country. This created cities that cater to people and the human experience. Our cities, and how we design and experience them, began to change with the automobile. Following World War II, when personal vehicle ownership increased and the government began subsidizing suburban development, this had a lasting effect on how we experience our cities. Instead of multimodal streets, cars became king, and we adapted the design of our cities accordingly. The building in the photograph, a former department store on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, was the first commercial building intentionally designed to be experienced from a car rather than as a pedestrian. Experiencing a city through a windshield at 45 miles per hour is very different than walking through it at 5 miles per hour, and this legacy continues through our suburban development to this day. At the same time that suburban development was being promoted on the edges of the cities, the historic commercial and residential neighborhoods suffered from disinvestment and racially discriminatory policies. These neighborhoods were the target of urban renewal by HUD, the Housing and Urban Development branch of the federal government. In many communities of color, the historic neighborhoods were deemed as slums and cleared and replaced with multi-story tower blocks and infrastructure such as freeways in cities across the country. These residential developments, despite providing subsidized housing, were often poorly built and weren't suited to provide the same sense of community that existed in the neighborhoods they replaced. Further, these projects were heavily top-down and didn't include any authentic community engagement from the residents who would inevitably live there. During this period, community design emerged as an answer to the car-centric urban design and the top-down developments that had been targeted at low-income neighborhoods and communities of color, seeking to inject participatory design and a human-centered approach to design and planning. Community design, often through community design centers, provided mission-oriented services to groups and populations who otherwise wouldn't have had access to them. Positioning residents and local stakeholders as the experts, this helped broadcast their needs and desires, translating them into design and planning initiatives that sought to address them. This included the intangible elements of the local character and sense of place, grounding all of the work in the local community. This was also among the first times that design and planning were seen as tools for economic development. Nearly 50 years later, community design has continued to evolve. Today, it has become central to design and planning projects, and authentic community engagement is considered to be best practices. As downtown revitalization has also become mainstream, an overlap with the arts has taken place with the field of placemaking. With community design continuing to evolve, so has both the meaning of it and how it is approached. Addressing the poor urban design of the last century, many municipalities have used community design as their development design review. This intends to make sure that new buildings are both place-based and warm and welcoming for pedestrians. At a neighborhood scale, many localized nonprofits have been created to incorporate community design at their neighborhood level. At a larger scale, many universities have developed community design centers as part of their service mission. This further provides mission-driven design and planning professionals to communities who otherwise wouldn't have been able to have access to it. Many of the themes discussed here will be elaborated on in the next video in the community design series. The next video will focus on the elements of walkability, examining pieces of our public realm that make a place feel warm and welcoming to pedestrians. After the overview of walkability, we will talk about community engagement. Engagement can often be seen as a box to check, rather than as a helpful tool to find the answer to the question you are looking to solve. The final video in the community design series will look at placemaking and tactile urbanism projects that have been piloted in communities of all shapes and sizes. These projects have used community engagement to improve the walkability and sense of place in their community. Each of these themes help tell the story of community design and how it can be adapted within a variety of budgets, goals, and communities. Thank you for joining us as we talked about community design. Stay tuned for future videos which will be released each week on topics such as building partnership coalitions and the role of arts in community development. I am Ryan, and this has been 6 Minutes with CEDIK.